Well, welcome back to Learn to Fly with Nick, and today is part 3. We're on the hill, we're slope soaring, and just to let you know, I've not made any changes to my glider that we did in our previous 2 lessons. The only thing I've done is made sure that my battery is charged. I've given my glider a good check over to make all the controls are free and flowing, and that nothing has come loose with all the antics that we've been doing in the past. Now, slope soaring. Let's have a chat. Right, so slope soaring. What's the theory? It's dead simple. Here's your slope. The wind goes up, and instead of just going like that, it goes up a certain component, and that will depend, this vertical component will depend on the shape of the hill and also the speed of the hill, because sometimes if you've got a slope like this and it's really strong, you're hardly going to get any slope lift at all. So your exercise today, all I want you to do, and I'm going to talk you through this, but I just want you to go through this process in your head, is we're going to be flying figure of eights. I'm going to want you to take off, and today I'm electing to take off to the left. I'm going to take off, we're going to fly forward about 4 or 5 feet, turn left, and then we're going to fly down the slope in a straight line. We don't want to go out of sight, so we want to stay fairly close to ourselves, and then we're just going to do a right hand turn, 180 degree turn. So this is a slope, we're doing a 180 degree turn like this, and then we're just going to head back. So we do the turn out from the slope and then head back to the path that you were just flying, which you'll see in a moment when I do the videoing. Then you're going to come down past you. This is me stood here. You're going to come down past you, and then you do another 180 degree turn, this one to the left. You swing back as a figure of 8, and then you get back on the ridge and you're going up and down. The reason we do that, and the reason I want to instill this on you to start off with, particularly as a beginner, let's just say that plane flies at 12 miles an hour. If the wind is blowing at 10 miles an hour, you're flying forward at 2 miles an hour. This is rough theory for anybody on a keyboard at the moment. If, when you turn into the wind, so if you're flying along the wind, you're going to be doing more of a 12 mile an hour, a little bit of a crosswind component to take the speed off. Let's not argue to make it easier. We're doing 12 mile an hour, we turn into the wind, then the next thing is we're down to 2 mile an hour. That's fine, because the glider's still going forwards. The reason I want you to do turns away from the slope is if you do a turn towards the slope, glider's doing 12 mile an hour, you've got the wind behind you which is 10 mile an hour, you're suddenly doing 22 miles an hour, everything happens real quickly, and the next thing is it's gone in over the back of the hedge or over the back of the hill, because you haven't been able to fly it properly, because you'll find that unless you put the nose down, the controls aren't going to work as well anyway. So this is the golden rule of this task, is to practice doing figure of 8 turns with you in the middle. So we're going off to the left, back to the right, always doing outside turns, and that's all we're going to do. And then I'm going to talk you through the landings and things in a moment when we actually get ourselves flying. So hopefully that's as clear as mud. Let me demonstrate. We've done the right thing. We have switched the transmitter on first with the throttle closed. So we close the throttle, switch the transmitter on, and the controls check. That's exactly as it was when we were flying earlier. So we're now going to go. Right, so I'm going to stand, you want to stand right on the edge, as long as it's safe. The glider's all trimmed. I've got my glider in my left hand, because I want my right hand, my dominant hand, on the controls. Let's have a little look here. There she is, she's ready to go. I can feel she's lifting, and she's away. Right, there we go. Now, I'm heading out about 30 degrees. You'll notice she's climbing, lovely. Now, I am just going to add a couple of clicks of down trim. There you go. Now, see how that's now, I'm now going down the slope. And then what I'm going to do is I am just going to turn around, bring it round, and then back down the hill. Back down the slope, do a left hand turn, and then fly all the way back. And there she is, look. Beautiful. Typically flying into the sun. And this is all I want you to do, is just to do. So don't go too fast, you get out of the way, you can't see what's going on. And then do right hand turn, and then before you start heading towards the hill, just fly backwards. Now, you'll notice there, you see how that was flying slightly faster coming the other way? If the wind changes slightly, which it can do, you might find that you've ended up with a little bit of a downwind component, that's a classic demonstration about why you need to be flying basically into the wind, or turning into the wind all the time. And this is literally slope soaring. This is all you do. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, this looks really boring. But I tell you what, you get a day like today, and what can happen is the wind can change, the weather can change, and the whole time you are concentrating on flying, doing your left and right turns all the time. Now, let's talk about landing. You see where that glider is now? That's just about where the wind is going to stop going up and starts to go down behind the slope. That we call rotor. So what's happening is the wind, once it's gone up the hill a certain amount, will start to then want to then descend downwards. We call that rotor. Look at this height I've got now. Look at it. This is epic. This is from a 20-foot sand dune, look. Look at that. So what we've got to be doing is when we're doing our landing, what we've got to be worried about is you've got to be worried about rotor. Now, the golden rule is the steeper the slope, or if it's a cliff you're flying from, the more violent the rotor is going to be and closer to the front. So if you're flying a cliff like that one over there, it's called Putsborough, the rotor is quite bad there, and it doesn't actually go back very far because it's a sheer vertical cliff. Oh, look at this, look. How can anybody call this boring soaring? Now, got a bit of height here, look. I can actually just fly out. Look, I'm hardly losing any height, but again, I'm making all my turns away from the slope. And that is how you want to think about losing height. So if you've decided you want to come into land, now today, if I wanted to, I could go and land on the beach as long as it's safe and there's nobody about. In fact, actually, I tell you what, that's just given me a cracking idea. Let me just show you something here. Right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me just show you this here as an experiment. Now, what's the speed of this glider as I turn into the wind? Very slow, isn't it? Now, very slow, just slowly going forwards. That's fine. Now, look what happens when I decide to turn downwind. Look how fast that's going. Look at that. So that's where you get your 2 mile an hour forward and your 20 odd mile an hour backwards. So something to be aware of. Now, once you've done your figure of eights and you've got some height like I've got here, and to be honest with you, on a good slope, you're going to get even more height. But I'm just using this as a training slope because if I go really high, you're never going to see the glider. What you can practice doing is then just doing a 360 turn. So I'm going to come round to the left, like you did on the trimming field, and then back into wind. But if you're doing that, make sure that all your turns are not going to end up behind the hill. So in other words, go forward enough so you can go round to the left, round to the left, round to the left, round to the left, and then as it comes round, a little bit of right, straighten her up, and there you go. So just be careful if you get to the stage where you've been flying around and you're quite confident with your figure of eights, and we want to practice the 360s for when we want to be looking for thermal lift. What you don't want to be doing is doing the 360 just about here, because if it gets behind the hill, you won't get it forward. So don't be doing this at the moment. what you want to do is go forwards like so. You've got plenty of height. Look, I'm going to come round to the right, come round to the right. There you go, just flying in front of me like so. But I've given myself the safety margin that that glider was never behind the hill. So the golden rule, if you're going to start thinking about doing 360s, which I'd like, I'm sure that you're going to do your figure of eights and then you're going to get on to doing 360s, the 360 turns. The golden rule is, at the moment, give yourself enough forward space and vertical separation from the slope so that you're not going to end up behind. Now, landing, rotor. We've discussed rotor already, and rotor is a killer. It kills full-size pilots in flying full-size aircraft. It will kill anybody if you get into rotor and you're not aware of it. It can be a deadly thing. Now, I've just circled round there, and what I've done is I've flown out of the ridge lift, like so, and I'm now losing height. So what I've done is I've just done a little 360, like so, and that's still at about the same height. What I'm looking to do now is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very low 360. I'm going to come round into wind, like so. Going to bring it round, so I'm just in front of the hill, just in front of the hill. Now, I'm a bit high at the moment. If you're too high, don't force it. Just go forwards. Look, a little bit of push forward a little bit on the stick, and there we go. She's gone forward, because that there was what I call a missed approach. So in other words, I was too high to be able to land that glider. And what you don't want to be doing is forcing it into the ground, because you're going to damage it. So the golden rule is, if you're too high, just fly out and have another go. It's not like anything's going to be running out. So look, I'm just going to fly around here now. I'm just going to do my 360 in front of the hill, 360 in front of the hill, losing height, 360 in front of the hill, and then I'm going to come round. I'm going to go through the lift band. So just keep flying, keep flying, keep flying, and then we're just going to hold that there into wind. There. That's exactly all I did. Literally, when I got down to about 2.5, 3 feet, I just put a tiny little bit of down elevator on, and that was enough to keep it in place. And once you've actually landed your glider, so good tip here, let me show you this. If you land your glider somewhere windy, let's say it's like this, until you get there, keep the down stick forward, so keep it forward, because that's controlling the glider. Watch what happens. Look, if I waggle that about, so you keep your trim forward at all times, and then when you pick the glider up, because if you take the trim off, the wind can get underneath it, and you've blown it over the back of the hill and it's damaged. Right, slope soaring with Nick. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It can feel a little frenetic when you're doing it, but just remember my golden rules. When you're first starting out, figure of eights away from the slope, and don't get the glider behind you until you're actually thinking about doing a landing. If you launch and the glider gets behind you, you've got to start looking at, was it pilot related, or is it a little bit too windy? So I would suggest 10 to 12 mile an hour on any slope with this gentle lady is going to be perfect. But just be careful. Stay out of the rotor. So in other words, when you're stood on the cliff or stood on the hill, remember behind you there's going to be a certain portion of that air that's doing this, called rotor. And what you're always, the golden rule to remember is just keep flying the glider with some speed. If you get into rotor, just fly the glider forwards. The other thing is, if you're doing a landing, you think to yourself, wow, I'm way too high, go round. So in other words, when I say go round, fly out from the slope and then have another go. You can have as many goes as you like. And I can tell you now, with my 50 years of flying experience, I can tell you now there's plenty of pilots that I know have died flying full-size gliders, full-size hang gliders, paragliders, light aircraft and bigger, that didn't decide to go round. They decided to try and sort out a bad situation. If it's bad, just fly out. Anyway, hope you enjoy that, and I look forward to doing the next one, which will be the power pod for the gentle lady, and possibly we can start talking about advanced maneuvers. Anything you'd like to learn about flying this glider, just put a little note in the comments, and remember Picasim, I've put a link in the description.